Hi guys, welcome back to the Fermented World channel. Previously today I have racked off the Vikings blood here into 2 demijohns as it's a double batch, and we've also got a little baby one because there was just too much and I had that lying around. A friend gave it to me and he says try this for like a test batch thing, so that's what we've gone and done. We've done a bit of a test batch in it. And if you want to know what else this one's got in it, you'll have to watch the Vikings blood video. So, what are we doing with the tub that the Vikings blood was in? I'm glad you never asked. Try and reuse the yeast that's in there. I know that with beer, you can take out of the yeast and then reuse it for another brew. I've heard of brewers doing it. I think I've seen somebody do it on YouTube as well. So I'm going to try it with mead yeast. Why not? So we need some cold water in here for now, because otherwise we'll kill the yeast with the heat from the hot water, and we don't want to do that. So let's see what the temperature comes out at for that. We're going down, we're at 28 at the moment. It needs to be below 28, but I don't really want to put any more in yet because I've got honey to add. So while we're divvying about, we'll get some honey added, or better still, 28 degrees is okay. Right, so we're going to pour a bit of water in this. Like so. And then we're going to give it a swizzle. Swizzle, swizzle, swizzle. Which will capture all of the yeast. And then that wasn't as useful as I thought it was going to be. Get them raisins in, some tannins. There's every possibility this won't work, but in theory it should. And we're even going to use the cherries that were used, because looking at them, they're still quite dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mash them up and we're going to put them in and see if we can make another batch of Vikings blood using the same yeast and the same cherries. Because, I mean, some of them look sound. It's hard to see, but they do not look all that bad. So a bit of, oh, that was nearly my fingers. Careful when using hot water, especially if your name's Gaz, who's prone to injuring himself. Now, obviously adding the hot water is going to cause it to heat that back up, so we're going to add some cold water, and what this does, cools it back down so that we're not heating this up anymore, because that's pitching temperature. Within a little bit, the yeast that I've used can be pitched at that. I wouldn't like to, but it could be. Now, we're devilishly close to the limit here of what we're going to be able to fit in this, which is worrying. But hey, let's go. Worst case scenario, we have to put it in a bigger bucket, which I've got one that's semi-clean out there, so we shall see. It'll be interesting, I think, to see whether it does work. So it's more of an experiment, really. So I am using a cheap honey for this, just some clear honey, super cheap. And I think there was half of a blossom honey, one left. If it does work and it starts taking off, once we've finished fermenting what is in there, if it tastes good, we'll add some more honey, kind of step feed it, which is what that's called, where you add some more afterwards. We're going to need some yeast nutrients, which are here. Because in theory what should happen is the yeast will be like, way, more stuff to ferment, thank you very much. We'll get right on that and form a colony, which then should, by rights, consume the sugars. In theory. Everything works in theory, which is why we're going to try it. And if it works, I may never need to buy yeast again. Maybe I've harvested it wrong. To be fair, I've not actually Googled it or anything like that. I've just kind of spur of the moment, got stuff lying around, and I thought to myself, well, let's get it used instead of wasted. Right, so let's mix the honey in now. That'd be a good idea. I suppose if for whatever reason it doesn't start, I'll just throw some yeast in. Because I wouldn't want to waste the honey that I've put in it. Bit of a weird one, I know, but I just wanted to see whether it worked. Have a go. You don't know till you try, do you? I got a feeling this is going to go wrong when I add the cherries. Not any particular reason because of the cherries, but it's going to add a lot of volume. So what I am going to do is I'm not going to use this demijohn. I'm going to use one of these buckets. Smaller buckets that I've got down here. One of them was washed out the other day, so it's pretty clean, but we just need to quickly sterilize it. Ready to be used. So let's go do that. And while we wait for that, we are going to add some yeast nutrients. 1 level teaspoon per gallon batch. In it goes. Out of the way now. We're going to mix that in as well as the honey. As I said previously, I'm going to mash these cherries up, just in case there's any possibility of any sugars in there, flavors in there that haven't actually been used. Now it does have obviously an alcohol smell to it, but it's not going to matter at all, because once it's in there and diluted, it not affect the yeast at all. So let's get our bucket of justice, which is the one that was cleaned the other day. I'm going to drop this in there, and we're going to let them all go in like that. Literally empty the cherries. I mean, they're all swollen, and we don't want the threads in there. Out you come. I'm going to squeeze any juice or liquid back in there, because that's all going to add to the flavour. I mean, looking at it now, that's a hell of a lot of cherries. So that's the cherries in there now. Now we're going to add the rest of it and take a hydrometer reading. Just like that. the way a sec. So temperature's at 24 on that. Might go up a little bit. Now we're going to mash the cherries, which is what we should have done a second ago, but I forgot. And now it's made harder. So we won't get an efficient mash up. But we'll get something. Not sure what. Just a theory that you can reuse things, maybe. It might work, it might not. Either way, we're going to try. Let's take a hydrometer reading. Need to move them bottles. Keep kicking them. Very annoying. Not a lot of colour, but that's to be expected. And we've got a start gravity of 6246. So 1.066. And I'll write the rest of the notes later. We'll see what happens. Meh. Crazy. I'm not too fond of these buckets. The seal on them is not very good, but it is the only medium to large sized fermenter that I've got available at the moment. So yeah, we'll see what that does. Need to tidy that up now. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back whenever this is. I'll give it 10 days, see what it does. Hopefully within 10 days it's fermented or started. It might not, who knows, we'll see. So we're now back 17 days later from trying to reuse yeast. So we had some yeast that was in the Vikings Blood 3.0, which has now been bottled. Got a good yield out of it. It's really, really nice. It's going to go and chill for about a month, and then we're going to be drinking it. We took the yeast out of the bottom of the bucket that the Vikings blood was fermenting in, and as well as the cherries that were fermenting in it with it, we then put into kind of a new must to see whether we could get the yeast from that brew to then brew again. And if we have managed to do it, then amazing, because then it means I don't have to buy yeast anymore to a degree, if I can figure out a way of keeping it, storing it, and making sure that it's fresh and okay. So let's take the lid off and check the hydrometer, see if it has fermented. I'm not gonna lie, it looks nice, but the question is, has it fermented? I don't see any bubbles. It's got a lot more colour than it did have. So we had a start gravity of 1.066, and we now have a gravity of 0.0 992, which means it worked. We used the yeast again, and it's gone out and fermented all the honey that's in there. I mean, it's a little bit more pale than the other one, but that is good. I'm actually well happy with that, so it worked. Woohoo! Does it taste nice is the question though. It smells fruity. It looks fruity. And the reason why I left it at 17 days is because I wanted to give it plenty of time to form a colony again. But then again, it wouldn't have had to form a colony because it would already been in there, wouldn't it? Only a very mild fruitiness. Very mild. Not even any honey notes or anything like that. Tastes very watery. So there's not a lot going on. There's definitely alcohol because, you know, I just tasted it, I could feel it. There's no real flavor, there's no sweetness. The only thing that we've actually got is a fermentation and color is what we've taken from these berries. Now, I do have the stuff, the dried cherries that were could they still have any sweetness in? I'm going to go ponder this one instead of pondering it while I'm filming. So I'll be back shortly and we'll decide what we're actually going to do. Right, so I've had a little think about it instead of you having to listen to me umming and ahhing as to what I'm going to do. We're going to rack this into a pitcher. We're going to add some more honey to bring the AVB back up because it's gone down quite low. It can't ferment anymore because there's nothing really left for it to ferment, but it will once we add more honey, which is it's a way of getting a higher ABV. It's called step feeding. So all you're doing each time is you're adding more honey. After it's finished fermenting, you add more honey, and then it's like it was to begin with. Well, hey, let's eat this sugar. We're in the clear, because it's only when the yeast is sat in its own waste, which is obviously what alcohol is, that's when it gives up and it will die at a certain level of alcohol. Now this can go up to 18%. So we're going to step feed it as another part of an experiment. And we're also going to use these cherries that were in the original Vikings blood. Yeah, we're going to get the cherries from that used, or try to even add maybe some more sweetness to this. We're going to put this into a pitcher, mix in some more honey gently. We're going to put it into a clean demijohn, which is here, and we're going to attempt to add the said dried cherries and let that ferment. They weren't fermented first time, they've just been sat in and kind of steeped out, so there was no fermenting involved, so there might very well still be some sweetness in them. But hey, first part of the experiment worked, so why not carry on? We can't lose really, because we have got a beverage that's guesstimated at about maybe 6 or 7%. In fact, let me go find out right now. It's actually at 9.8%. So it's already halfway nearly to where we want it to be. So yeah, we're going to add more honey. Not that one though, because I can't guesstimate how much that is because the kids have been using it on their breakfast. They found my stash. I do need to buy some more anyway. But yeah, we're going to put a whole one of these in and see what it does. Hopefully, theory says it should begin to ferment it. It's not reached its tolerance. It's not been pasteurized, so the yeast is still alive. We could get a bit of a problem with any of the stoppers that's in there, but most of the stoppers would remain in the liquid, suspended, you see. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. Right now, I'm probably going to have to go do the school run in a sec, but we might at least get it racked off. So let's try and get it racked off if we can. Now, we don't want the cherries, but we do want the yeast. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to mix it all back up so that the yeast gets mixed into the mixture, and then we can take it with us. If you follow my meaning. There we go, getting it all murky again now. Doing this gently because we don't want to, what's the word, oxygenate too much, because we've still got a lot of fermenting to do. So there we go, that's nice and murky now. And I'm just going to keep stirring it just so we know we get all of that. Normally you would not do this. You definitely would not be mixing the bottom of the the trub or whatever it's called, lees, whatever you want to call it. Would not be mixing that stuff up. You would be bypassing that and leaving it in the bottom. But we want it because we're going to try and carry on fermenting. I feel like a right mad scientist sometimes. It's brilliant. So yeah, probably speed this bit up. So we successfully mixed up the yeast again off the bottom. You can see how cloudy that is. It was almost crystal clear, so we have got the yeast. It's only at 9 point something %. So we've still got plenty of ability to sweeten this back up and try to add the dried cherries that we used in the secondary part of that. Now, like I say, all it's giving this is colour and possibly aroma. There's no real flavour in there. In fact, it's quite bland and watery. There's no sweetness whatsoever because it's gone dry. So yeah, let's add another load of honey. It'll ferment this honey. We know it's going to because we know that it fermented the first lot of honey. So we're going to put this in, mix it up, take a hydrometer reading, and then rack it off into the demijohn. Okay, so that's the honey in for the most part. This bit's just trying to dissolve that bit because we can't shake this up. We don't want to add any oxygen to this brew. It's not really at a safe ABV where the acebacters, which is what turns alcohol into vinegar, don't want to add that. It would not be wise. So we're mixing in our honey very carefully as to not create any bubbles, making sure that it's dissolved properly. Now, we have gone quite high in volume here, so we're at about the 4.5 litre mark. I'm actually just going to put it in a bucket because it's not worth the risk of it overflowing. So Simple as that, really. So let us prep this, ready to go back in there. It's already sterile because we've only just used it, you know. All I've done is taken the cherries out that were in there. So hoy that up, because it's nearer the 5 litre mark now, so it's not worth it, you know, for the sake of having it in a demijohn. I mean, I'd quite like to see it fermenting, you know, but we're just not blessed like that, so it's the way it goes. So what we do need to do is, before it's gone into the, well, it doesn't matter, don't need to do it before, but we need another hydrometer reading so we can tell what the ABV is going to be after this is fermented. And then we're going to add more honey once it's fermented this honey, depending on what the final ABV is. Because if it goes over the 18, which I've never had one do, I've never had one go over 18. I've had one at 17.95, but never over the 18. So that's resting on 40 now. 1.10, so always making notes. 720G honey added, and point to today's date, and then we put down what the gravity reading is now, 1.040 after the honey. So now we know that there's 40, maybe 50 points of fermentable sugars in there, which the yeast that is in there will be woken back up because there's now more sugar, more liquid in there as well. So it's obviously diluted down because we're adding more volume to it. And it's not at its tolerance yet, so it's just going to carry on doing it. Always looks like someone's having a blood transfusion when the Vikings blood flows, doesn't it? Not sure why it's making that noise. It'll be catching a lot of air bubbles. Which is annoying. Come on, behave yourself. Nearly done. And then we're going to add, safer to put it in this one actually. Although now I'm probably going to have to tip that in anyway. Dang nabbit. Let's see if we can get these cherries out of here without much problem. I'm going to have to go really, really close so that they don't splosh about, which they want to do anyway. Okay, I'm not going to force the issue anymore because we're getting a lot of that gnarly stuff coming in now. And as I said, I didn't want a great deal of that in because this has had the behave yourself. Right, it's not all of them out of there, but it's most of them. So we're hoping that might give it a bit of flavour with them cherries in there now. It's all mixed in, and this should restart fermentation. If not, we'll have something that's super sweet and about 9%. And that's all for today, folks. Need to think of a name for this, because it's not Vikings blood, because there's no cherry flavour yet. But like I say, we could always add some dried cherries at the end to give it that flavour. It looks good. It's certainly got the colour, which just goes to show the amount of cherries that I used. It was excessive because it hadn't even taken all of the colour out of it. Yeah, So yeah, that's all folks. We'll be back. Need to buy some more honey now, in case this ferments itself, or ferments itself back out again. And then we'll add some more. Catch you in a bit. Thanks for watching.